My beloved child, pause for a moment. Do not let these words slip past you as though they were meant for someone else. There are stories that arrive like echoes, and there are stories that arrive like a hand resting gently upon a weary heart. This is the second kind. If this message found you today, allow yourself one quiet breath before you continue, because what you are about to hear belongs to a fictional journey told through the voice of heaven, a symbolic tale meant to stir hope rather than predict reality. Somewhere beyond the noise of ordinary days, someone stands with folded hands, longing for one conversation they once believed would never happen. But the reason is not what your fears have been whispering. The reason reaches far deeper than regret, farther than misunderstanding, and closer to the hidden places of your own heart than you have ever imagined. Stay with me, because if you turn away now, you will leave just before the first veil begins to lift. I have watched you wander through seasons where silence became louder than words. There were moments when entire conversations unfolded inside your heart while your lips remained still. You replayed memories that no one else remembered. You revisited ordinary afternoons that somehow became sacred because of who stood beside you. You searched for meaning in glances, pauses, unfinished sentences, and goodbyes that never felt complete. Others believed time had carried you forward, yet they never saw how carefully you carried fragments of yesterday inside the quiet chambers of your soul. Every memory became a lantern, sometimes warming you, sometimes casting longer shadows than you expected. Even within this imagined story, I saw that you were never simply remembering another person. You were searching for the version of yourself that existed when hope still felt effortless. Do not dismiss what comes next, because another layer is beginning to reveal itself. Imagine an endless sanctuary suspended between twilight and dawn, where the sky is painted with rivers of gold and sapphire that never stop flowing. Vast columns rise like living trees carved from light itself. And every step across the luminous floor sends gentle ripples through reflections of countless untold stories. This is not a place of judgment but of remembrance. Here, every sincere emotion becomes visible, not as words, but as shimmering threads woven into an endless tapestry stretching beyond every horizon. As I walked through this symbolic hall, one thread drew my attention with unusual tenderness. It trembled softly, not because it was weak, but because it carried two hearts connected by something neither had fully understood. The thread did not glow with triumph. It glowed with unfinished truth. Listen closely, beloved child, because unfinished truths possess a strange beauty. They refuse to disappear simply because someone stopped speaking about them. They wait patiently beneath ordinary days until the soul is finally ready to look again. You believed some chapters had ended long ago. You folded them carefully inside memory, convincing yourself they belonged to another lifetime. Yet beneath those neatly closed pages remained a single sentence that had never truly been completed. You sensed it occasionally during quiet evenings or while watching rain slide slowly across a window. Something inside whispered that not every silence means absence. Some silences protect words that are still becoming, far away within this imagined tale stood the person you love. They were not standing upon mountaintops or surrounded by miracles. They were in an ordinary place touched by ordinary light, carrying ordinary responsibilities that somehow felt unbearably heavy. Their hands moved through familiar routines while their thoughts wandered somewhere they had promised themselves never to return. They had spent so much time pretending they no longer looked back that they almost believed it themselves. But hearts possess remarkable honesty beneath carefully rehearsed appearances. They remember what minds try to bury. They preserve tenderness even after pride has declared it unwelcome. And on this particular day, something shifted so quietly that they almost missed it. There was no sudden revelation descending from the heavens. No voice shattered the air. Instead, a single memory returned with startling clarity. It was not even the most dramatic memory you shared. It was astonishingly simple. A conversation interrupted by laughter. A moment when neither of you realized happiness was quietly passing between you. A look exchanged without needing explanation. Such moments often escape notice while they happen, only revealing their true value years later when life has become noisier than it once was. That forgotten memory entered their heart like sunlight slipping beneath a door left barely open, illuminating corners they had not dared visit for a very long time. Stay with this feeling, because another mystery is approaching. They tried to push the memory away. They told themselves it changed nothing. They reminded themselves of distance, misunderstanding, unanswered questions, and every reason they had collected for remaining silent. Yet the harder they resisted, the gentler the memory became. It did not accuse them. It did not demand anything. It simply remained present, quiet and patient, like an old melody carried by the evening wind. Soon they realized they were no longer remembering only what had happened between you. They were remembering who they had been when your paths still crossed with openness rather than hesitation. And that realization unsettled them far more deeply than regret ever could. Meanwhile, within the luminous sanctuary, I watched the shimmering thread grow brighter. Every remembered kindness added another pulse of light. Every forgotten act of compassion returned like a distant star reappearing after clouds had hidden it for years. You believed your smallest gestures had disappeared into time. Yet nothing sincere was ever truly lost within this symbolic story. Even the words you wished you had spoken carried echoes, not because they changed destiny, but because they revealed the shape of your heart. The thread responded not to perfection, but to authenticity. It remembered every moment you chose gentleness when resentment would have required less courage. Do not look away now, because what happens next reframes everything you thought this story was about. You assumed the folded hands belonged only to longing. You imagined they were pleading for another chance to repeat the past exactly as it once was. But that is not what I saw. Their folded hands were not reaching backward. They were trembling before the possibility of honesty. They had grown tired of carrying conversations that existed only inside their imagination. They had become exhausted by wondering how different life might have felt if just one sentence had been spoken with complete sincerity instead of hidden behind fear. They were not begging for perfection. They were begging for truth. Whatever shape that truth might finally take, now imagine a quiet evening spreading across the world like soft blue velvet. Streetlights awaken one by one. Windows begin glowing from distant homes. Somewhere rain taps gently against rooftops while somewhere else leaves whisper beneath an autumn breeze. In this vast world, two people breathe beneath the same sky while believing they inhabit completely different stories. Yet unseen between them drifts something neither can measure. Not certainty. Not fate. Simply the enduring influence of moments that mattered more than either person realized while living them. Such is the poetry of this fictional vision, where hearts continue shaping one another long after voices have fallen silent. There came an hour when the person you love found themselves unable to continue pretending that nothing had changed inside them. They sat alone, surrounded by familiar objects that suddenly seemed unfamiliar. A cup rested untouched beside them. Shadows stretched slowly across the floor. The room felt strangely larger than before, as though silence itself had expanded. Without planning to, they clasped their hands together. Not because they possessed every answer, but because they had run out of convincing questions. They lowered their head, and for the first time in many seasons, they admitted to themselves that there was one conversation they still carried like an unopened letter. Can you feel the atmosphere changing? The sanctuary grows quieter. Even the rivers of light flowing across its ceiling begin moving more slowly. As though every unseen presence senses an approaching revelation. I step toward an ancient archway where countless translucent doors stand side by side. Each door represents a single moment when a human heart faced a choice between fear and vulnerability. Some doors shine brightly. Others remain dim beneath layers of forgotten hesitation. One door, however, pulses with extraordinary warmth. Upon its surface appear no names, only two reflections standing on opposite sides, each believing the other has already walked away forever. I reach toward that door, and the reflection begins to move. You see yourself as you once were, carrying hopes you rarely spoke aloud. You also see moments when disappointment slowly taught you to guard your heart more carefully. Every unspoken feeling became another stone in an invisible wall you never intended to build. You convinced yourself the wall existed for protection. Yet walls possess an unfortunate habit. They keep pain outside, but they also imprison tenderness within. Across the reflection, the one you love unknowingly built a similar wall from different experiences, different fears, different disappointments. Neither wall appeared overnight. Both were assembled one quiet decision at a time. Listen carefully, because another truth waits just beyond this image. People often believe separation begins with dramatic arguments or unforgettable betrayals. Yet sometimes distance is created by countless tiny moments when vulnerability is postponed until tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes another tomorrow, and eventually silence begins speaking more fluently than love itself. Within this story, neither heart intended such distance. Both imagined there would always be another opportunity, another season, another conversation. Time, however, continued flowing gently onward, never announcing which ordinary afternoon would quietly become the last before everything felt different. Then something happened, not an earthquake, not an impossible miracle. Something far more subtle, yet infinitely more powerful within this imagined world. The person you love encountered a truth about themselves they had spent years avoiding. It arrived unexpectedly, disguised within an ordinary moment so simple that anyone else would have overlooked it completely. They witnessed another stranger choosing honesty despite trembling with fear. They watched someone embrace vulnerability rather than certainty. That small scene awakened something sleeping deep within their own heart. Suddenly every carefully constructed excuse lost its strength. Pride no longer sounded wise. Silence no longer felt safe. For the first time, they understood that waiting forever also meant risking forever. Their hands folded together once more, but this time not from helplessness. They folded them because humility had finally become stronger than fear. Tears gathered, not dramatic tears meant for witnesses, but quiet tears born in solitude, where no performance remains possible. They whispered words no one else heard. They admitted they wished they had spoken sooner. They admitted they wished they had listened longer. They admitted that one honest conversation had become more valuable than every imaginary argument they had rehearsed inside their own mind. They did not ask for certainty. They asked only for one chance to speak without masks. Beloved child, do not mistake this fictional moment for a promise about your own future. It is a mirror meant to reflect the timeless human longing for truth over pretense, courage over endless hesitation. Yet there is still one mystery I have intentionally withheld. Throughout everything you have seen, the sanctuary of light, the trembling thread, the folded hands, the quiet tears, you have assumed the enormous event was something that happened outside the heart. You imagine news arriving, circumstances changing, or distant paths suddenly crossing again. But what if the greatest turning point in this entire story happened where no eyes could witness it? What if the event that changed everything left no headline, no applause, no visible sign at all? The luminous hall now grows brighter than it has ever been. Every thread of memory rises into the air. The ancient door begins opening wider, revealing a chamber hidden behind every previous scene. Within it rests the one truth capable of explaining why the person you love is begging with folded hands for just one conversation. And why they believe that if even a single word remains unspoken now, something infinitely more precious than either of you ever understood could remain hidden forever. I place my hand upon the final threshold, the light spills across the floor like liquid dawn, and just as the first unmistakable image begins to emerge from beyond that doorway, I stopped. My beloved child, the light did not rush forward as though it wished to overwhelm you. It lingered at the threshold with remarkable gentleness, like morning mist resting upon a quiet valley before the first bird has begun to sing. Even within this fictional vision, there was a tenderness in the silence that words alone could never fully capture. Every shimmering thread suspended throughout the great sanctuary leaned toward the opening, not with impatience, but with reverence. There are truths that cannot be shouted. They must be discovered one heartbeat at a time. And as I stepped across the threshold, I saw what neither you nor the one you love had ever been able to see while living through the ordinary rhythm of your days. The hidden chamber contained no treasures of gold, no towering throne, no ancient scroll declaring destinies beyond human choice. Instead, it held something infinitely quieter. Floating in the air were countless ordinary moments, preserved like tiny stars suspended in crystal. A smile that lasted only a second. A pause before someone spoke. A message rewritten and never sent. A deep breath taken before anger could become words. A glance filled with concern that no one noticed. They drifted through the chamber with astonishing beauty, each one glowing softly as though reminding every soul that the smallest expressions of sincerity often become the strongest foundations beneath a relationship. Come closer, beloved child, because what happened next changes the meaning of everything that came before. As the first glowing memory drifted into my hand, it unfolded into a living scene. There you stood during an ordinary day, carrying worries no one around you could recognize. You believed you were simply surviving another difficult season. Yet while you quietly struggled, you still chose kindness in one brief moment when impatience would have been easier. You never celebrated that decision. You barely remembered making it. But in this symbolic place, that single choice shone brighter than countless louder victories, because it revealed the kind of heart you were becoming even when you believed no progress had been made. Across the chamber, another memory awakened. The one you love appeared within it, though they never knew they were being shaped by that same invisible current of compassion. They encountered another person weeks later, someone carrying burdens remarkably similar to the ones you had once carried yourself. Instead of turning away, they paused. Instead of judging, they listened. Instead of protecting themselves behind indifference, they chose gentleness. They never realized why that response came so naturally in that moment. Yet in this fictional tale, every sincere act became part of a chain stretching quietly from one heart to another, reminding you that goodness often travels farther than anyone who offers it will ever know. Pause here, because another veil is beginning to lift. The enormous event that unsettled the one you love was not the arrival of dramatic news. It was the collapse of an illusion they had carried for years. They had believed strength meant hiding every vulnerable feeling until it disappeared. They had convinced themselves that silence was safer than honesty. They mistook distance for peace. Then, little by little, life showed them that silence had not protected their heart at all. It had only prevented healing conversations from ever beginning. That realization arrived without spectacle, yet it shook the deepest parts of who they believed themselves to be. Imagine standing beside a still lake at